Firstly, let's talk about shape predictability. So, what this refers to is that when starting out in a new software, it is very common to use the same modeling operations over and over again. And in most cases, this is like something like an offset or inset, and then using something like an extrusion. So, the problem with this mainly lies with the fact that it can very quickly look like somebody is limited by their knowledge of software and tools rather than by their design ideas. So, if we go into our side view, we can see that we have created some new detail without actually changing our silhouette, which results in our design reading very repetitively. Perhaps what we can do, just as a quick example, let's see how we can break this up. Starting with our same extrusion, we could, for example, just push one of those sides through. We could then go ahead and push this one a bit further in. So right now we have already created some sort of disbalance between those two sides. And then to actually change our silhouette, let's go and create some sort of loop cut, rotate this face slightly. And this is like a very standard operation, but then we could perhaps, let's try whether or not we could rotate this face as well. I think this one worked. And then we can just go ahead and bevel those kind of corners, right? And now, as of right now, we're already left with something that looks like it has a lot more intent and isn't simply following the outlines of our previous shapes. We could even enhance this by pushing this side through or pushing this one down. Essentially, that's up to you. Anyway, all I'm saying is whenever you're using something like an inset or an extrusion, try to ask yourself whether or not you could do something more with it, something to break up the repeating outline of your parent shape. Nextly, let's talk about something called the rule of thirds, which some of you might have heard about. And essentially, it refers to the fact that while symmetry most definitely has its place, one very common problem is that all of those software tools provide equal splits, right? 50-50 splits. But then again, um, sometimes this leads to designs looking fairly predictable and boring. So using something like a 2/3 ratio, so if we were to push this one down a bit further, can actually give our design some sense of hierarchy. And then we could even take this one a step further and split this one at a 2/3 ratio once again, move it upwards slightly to close our design, perhaps draft it or rotate it slightly, and then give this one a short bevel. And essentially, all of a sudden, with just a few clicks, we've turned something that is fairly readable or fairly boring into something that is readable and has some hierarchy. Arrays are a great tool to add detail quickly or to suggest complexity in some areas, but then again, they come with the threat of looking very repetitive and uninspired very quickly. So let's say we were using an array, perhaps we could use something like 16 elements, drag those out. Perhaps I should scale all of those one down. And then right here, now all of those perfect symmetrical arrays do have their place in some cases, but once again, let's take a look what we can do to alter this kind of shape. So perhaps to give all of this more intent, we could remove one element right here. Perhaps we could even remove another one. And then what happens if we merge those two using a Boolean? And then perhaps we could add a loop cut or an isoparam right here, rotate this one. And now all of a sudden we do have something that is a little bit more intentional, right? So we do get that right here. We've got some sort of focal point that lends itself to our array. So whenever using an array, just keep in mind that perhaps you can do something more interesting with it by removing elements or by creating negative space.